It's Thursday. We are going to have our Justice Thursday conversation, protection of children in the justice system. That is what we want to discuss today, and we are joined by two ladies. Dr. Florence Mueni is a member of the National Council on Administration of Justice Standing Committee on the Administration of Access to Justice for Children, long NCAJ Standing Committee on Administration of Access to Justice for Children. Dr. Mueni, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
The other guest is Patricia Mundia. Patricia is a member of this Standing Committee on the Administration of Access to Justice for Children, representing the Law Society of Kenya. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Mkosalama. It's cold out there. It was cold out there early this morning, like at 1 a.m. when Ndu was getting in. Is it still?
Yeah.
Same? It's been cold. It's been cold. Now, City.
Well, yes. Our proverbs for the whole of this week, now listen very carefully, comes from an island nation on the continent of Africa, but it's ensconced in Central Africa. It's called Sao Tome Principe. We were told yesterday that's not how it's pronounced. It's pronounced Sao Tome e Principe.
I see.
That is how we're told it's pronounced. Now, I had to repeat this several times before I came to the studio, just to make sure that I get it right. Because yesterday it confused my system thoroughly.
You're doing well, City.
Now, ladies, the two proverbs they refer to, I mentioned that I love the proverbs from in fact, there are so many and they're all good. But some are a little on the speedy side, so I'd rather not mention them. They can be offensive. So I'll choose the one which is not offensive. Okay?
Okay.
But maybe I should mention the offensive one and tell me whether you find offense. The less offensive one. A frog does not drink up the pond in which it lives.
A frog does not drink up the pond in which it lives.
Yes. Now, the offensive one is, if money grew on trees, women would marry monkeys. See, I told you it was offensive.
Is it? Dr.
I'm
Mueni?
not offended.
Uh-huh. See, I told you.
Makes some sense.
Be fearless. City.
Me, I'm fearful.
Be fearless.
Me, I'm fearful.
Patricia, is it offensive?
I don't think so.
See, it's just a proverb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the interpretation that matters.
It's
City.
Yeah.
who is sitting next to the ladies. You're over there.
So which one would you like them to interpret?
I have mentioned both.
Okay.
Choose the one you want to interpret.
Okay.
Yes.
Which one? Dr. Mueni?
Maybe the one about the frog.
Okay.
Thank you.
The frog that lives in the pond does not.
Drink up.
Yeah.
It doesn't drink up the pond in which it lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it means that the pond maybe could be having very many resources. So, the water, it needs the water to survive and to float. So we cannot be able to, I think, we cannot misuse the resources that we have because we need them.
Very well put. Very, very well put.
Nice one. Nice one.
Yeah.
Patricia?
Well, I guess I'll take the
other
second one.
Good. If money grew on trees, women would marry monkeys.
Well, it presumes that women follow where the money is.
And of course, they're wrong.
As we say, it depends.
Let's interpret the proverb.
City's covering.
Quickly. I told him I'm not brave.
Yeah.
It seems to presume that. But I guess at the end of the day, it could be debunked because it depends on really if these specific women are following the money or not. So my interpretation would be, are you following it or not? So if it is, then maybe you'd marry a monkey. If not, then
you wouldn't.
Yeah.
No?
By the way, the other interpretation of this proverb, it's not talking about women. It's talking about men. And it's men who are being referred to as monkeys.
Yeah,
because they hop
from tree to tree.
From tree to tree, yes.
So money would be on trees, and then the men would be hopping
From tree to
from
tree.
tree to tree.
Yes.
And the woman would have to end up marrying those monkeys.
Yes.
Okay.
That's rich.
That's a nice one. Okay, let's talk about this Standing Committee on the Administration of and Access to Justice for Children. Of course, today in our Justice Thursday conversation, we're talking about protection of children in the justice system. So what is the NCAJ Standing Committee, this committee? Let's start with you, Patricia.
So the Standing Committee is basically a multi-sectoral committee. It includes members from different agencies from government, as well as also civil society. We have members from probation, for example, who are represented in the committee. We have people from the judiciary. I believe Justice Matheka is our chair. So we also have academia. You've had Juliet here before, I believe. We have probation. We have children officers, Department of Children's Services. So underlying this is, of course, looking at how justice is being administered in Kenya for children, and how also access to justice, the situation is for children, and how also collectively we can come together to address some of the issues that we know are there when it comes to children when they're in the justice system.
Okay. So at the end, what does the committee then do? Does the committee influence how the judiciary handles children who enter into the justice system? Does the committee interfere with systems that are set up in the judiciary? What does it do, apart from just sitting and bringing all together all these people representing all these interests, and then what?
Yeah. So like Patricia is saying, the committee is actually made up of the actors, the people who are supposed to even influence the way that matters of justice-involved children are undertaken. So the purpose of this committee is to bring together the people who are responsible for ensuring that children do access justice, and they access it in a way that safeguards their rights and their mental well-being. So we exist so that we can be able to mainstream children issues. So for example, you're talking about the judiciary, which is the courts. So we have children courts in Kenya, and we also have courts that may not be designed to be children courts per se, but they do serve children. So all the actors that converge there and provide services to children meet in this committee so that we can be able to deliberate on things like, for example, ensuring that cases of children do not take too long. Children are not put in institutions, in remands for too long. So we are looking at which agency is responsible for ensuring that, for example, when a child has been rescued or apprehended, that is the police, for example, they do their part within the shortest time possible and pass on that to the other agency and to the other agency. Things like programs for rehabilitation of children, things like, like we do have what we call the Children's Service Month, just ensuring that reports that are supposed to be written by probation officers, by children officers, are written, and children are able to their cases are dispensed with within the shortest time possible. So those are some of the things that we do talk about.
So you look at them and you'll say, these are areas of challenge. But then, would you be able to sort out those challenges? So, for example, the example you've given, the, say, police officers, the police department, police service, the police service, and the ngaos, chiefs, all right? A child is rescued by a chief or a police officer from an abusive situation, or a child is picked up by a chief or a police officer because of being in conflict with the law, okay? And you're saying that you want this child to, get the best service in the best way. this police station don't have child-friendly cells. There's no nearby children's center that they can even take this child to. So what do you do in the many cases that are like that in Kenya?
Yeah.
Will you just record it and then what?
Yeah, it's true. There are some places in Kenya where you would not get such services. I think in my experience in chief's office they do not have the cells, and they are not places for holding children. So the nearest place would be a police station. If there is no police station, of course, when a child is rescued, the first person that the chief is supposed to inform is a children officer. Mm-hmm. It is the responsibility of a children officer, who is also, member of the committee, to find a place where this child will be put if the home environment is unsuitable, if their home environment is the cause for that child's being in need of care and protection. So the children officer will liaise with the community-based organizations within that jurisdiction so that they can find a place for this child. If the nearby police station does not have a child protection unit for that child to stay for a short while their case is being handled. Yes.
What kind of children are we looking at that are in this system? Because I would imagine that it's across the spectrum. Orphans, vulnerable children who may have had, some kind of meeting with the law. What spectrum are we looking at here?
You're absolutely right. It could be a child who's a witness to maybe an offense. It could be a child who is being accused of committing an offense, who we normally refer to as a child in conflict with the law. It could be an abandoned child. Maybe somebody found a child somewhere and then took them to the police station. It could be even a child who has a disability. It could be a child who's a victim of trafficking. It could be a street child. It could be, we're just talking about any child who's coming into contact with government to a certain extent, right? And what, just to build up on what Mueni is saying, once you've identified a place where maybe this child can be placed for that small period of time, the first thing that we should get from the children officer is a report. And we have a Children Act 2022 which was passed, and I believe we're still in the process of trying to make sure that there's an awareness on how this process should be. But ideally, if you compare it to the previous act, we didn't have a specific form, for example, that the children officer can fill in that can tell everybody in the justice system what's going on. So at the police station, whatever police station now is now made aware of this child, should have a children officer. Under Schedule 1 of the Act, there's supposed to be a form that the children officer is supposed to fill in, and that form is the one that is supposed to now go to court. So during arraignment, this is the form that's usually presented. And when it's presented, everybody is expected to be there. The children officer, the advocate, because by this time they should have gotten representation, the parent of that child, if there is a parent or a guardian, and then a probation officer. There's different actors that the Act provides should be there. And this is all before the child even takes plea, for example, if it's a child in conflict with the law. So there's that process which you call the preliminary inquiry that should take place before a court, before a child is charged, for example, to just determine the safeguarding issues that are there.
What would we say is the status of safeguarding of children at this point? Because, we see certain things that even when it's being reported on, the child is not named, for example, or shown in public. But what's the status of protecting children, especially then when we come towards violent acts that would have been perpetrated against children, or when a child has experienced something and then is giving witness to it? What do we see that have been set up now for protection of children in that area?
First of all, there's already a provision in the Act, in the law, that, of course, privacy should be the paramount consideration when you're dealing with a child who is in the justice system. But we've also had a Supreme Court judgment previously that puts also the privacy of the child and making sure that all are held to account, including the media, I believe, just to make sure that it's elevated, the best interests of children are elevated over public interest even. Unfortunately, of course, you'll still find some instances where you see violence being perpetrated against children and it's also shared. And part of the things we are trying to also bring out is that if you see such a case, you're supposed to report it. There's avenues for reporting it. Even within DCI, there's avenues to report it without necessarily having to forward to different groups, because again it creates a situation where also the child is in more danger. I'm sure most of us have seen some graphic videos on social media, so it's one of the things we try and tell people. There's how you report such cases instead of forwarding.
So what is I still want to come back into, there's a committee that's bringing together all the, like you said, multi-sectoral. These are the words that are now in the country. Multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder engagement. So we have all these people who are involved in, who at least will come into contact with the child at one point in the justice system. And you sit as a committee and you look at the issues that are coming before you, and then you discuss and you recommend. Does the committee have any role beyond, let's say, writing a report or seeking information? Is there anything that you would do to point towards, breaches in enforcement of the law or in following the law? And would you enforce?
Yeah.
Okay, instances for it.
I think even to start with, the committee was very instrumental in the development of the Children's Law, the Children's Act. Yes. We do develop guidelines and policies regarding justice-involved children, whether those are children in need of care and protection or children in conflict with the law. The committee actually has also been talking about these violations of children that we have also been witnessing, and just cautioning against the violation of children's rights by even other actors, including state actors. So it does have some mandate towards that end.
Maybe just to build on that, we also have direct interventions as a committee whenever there's a case that's usually brought to attention. For example, if you think about instances like the Naivasha situation, when I don't know whether you heard about it, but there were a group of children who had been arrested and had been arraigned in court during protest.
Yes.
And part of that is also direct intervention from members of the committee, getting the children officers' reports done on time. Also, of course, intervening through the National Police Service to find out, okay, are they in a child protection unit? Are they being held together with adults? If they are, please, you need to separate them. If it is also in the courts, can we have courts probably sit as soon as possible? I think we saw Lady Justice Nzioka sat on a Sunday. Part of that was some of the interventions of some of the actors within the committee. So yes, there's usually direct intervention because the same actors are also on the ground.
So there's the Children's Act 2022, which is, new, and it actually deals with many issues that are there touching on children. But these are not the only laws that will come into play when children enter into the justice system. There are many other laws. Does everybody who's playing in this space know all these laws? Does everybody know what they're supposed to do when they come into contact with children and then those children are in the justice system?
I believe so, because these justice professionals do apply. They even exist because they're mandated by those laws, so they do apply those laws. Like, for example, The Children's Act talks about everybody. It talks about the police. It talks about prosecutors. It will talk about mental health professionals like psychologists. It will talk about magistrates and all that. But then there are specific ones like for probation officers. There is the Probation of Offenders Act that talk about when probation officers are writing reports in respect of children, how they what the things that they should consider. There is another law which we call the Boston Institutions Act, which talks about children who are committed by courts to those facilities that are run by Kenya Prison Service, and it talks about how that should go. I think there are other laws also that you can be able to add on. But what I'm saying is that, yes, for us to be able to provide this access to justice for children, then most of the justice actors are familiar because they derive their mandates from those laws.
How far does it spread in terms of these protections? When we're looking at some certain jurisdictions whereby, services can actually come into your home to ensure that you're actually treating children properly. That children, and here we're talking about under the age of 18, right? That children can actually give a call to government services and say something is not happening or something is that something is amiss, and that they would come in and step into such a situation. And I'm not drawing parallels, but I'm wondering how far do these protections go, whether it's in the home or we're just looking for external situations whereby children ought to be protected within the judicial system? How far do we reach?
Usually under the Department of Children's Services, there's actually a Kenya Children Assembly. And part of also the rallying call that we've had, even as a committee, is that nothing for children without children. Like, we also have to input their participation into whatever we are doing. So what you find is that it's a very vibrant, I think, assembly. I wish there was more awareness about it. And they have cabinet secretaries, they have their speakers, they have their they have their different programs. And when you listen to the memoranda that they present, usually there's usually those sessions where they present the memoranda and they talk about what they expect from government, what they want, what they have read from the act that they think can be implemented. Then you realize there's such knowledge amongst the children in terms of what they need and what they expect from the stakeholders. So yes, it gets to the homes. We were hoping that also it can come into the school curriculum as well, because I think it's about time we started having, I don't know what they'd be called, but some form of awareness and teaching around issues of justice and reform. At the home, I think then it goes back to parenting. We also say that parents need to be really involved in getting to know these laws and educating their children as well. But how far the government has gone into the homes of people is now a bit different.
But just to add, we do have a national helpline, which is 116. That line belongs to the government, the Directorate of Children's Services. It's free, supported by Safaricom, Airtel, and other providers. So a child can actually call 116 and report, or just talk about issues affecting them, or even report that they are being abused at home. And on the other side of that call, the people who receive those calls are children officers and counselors. So once a child is able to call and report and they say where they are, then they will liaise with whoever needs to respond to the issue that the child is raising, including even removing a child from an abusive situation. So that is very helpful. I know that there are some organizations that have child rights clubs in schools, like the Kenya Alliance for the Advancement of Children's Rights. It does run child rights clubs in schools, which creates the awareness in children, because for you to protect yourself as a child, you need to also know what rights, can be violated. So those clubs are very helpful in empowering children to know their rights. And then, of course, like Patricia is saying, the Kenya Children's Assembly is actually a formal arrangement where children bring to issues. They even go and talk to their MPs. They will talk to the governor. In every county there is a child governor. And MCS, child representatives. So they go and present their issues to the grown-ups, issues that are affecting children, and they hold them to account. So we have those forums where children
Progress is clearly being made, but I'm listening to what we're saying. It appears that issues relating to children, the adverse aspects of issues relating to children seem to be on the increase.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you're talking about violation of children, from again what I hear, many of them seem to take place in the place where they should expect the most protection.
Yeah.
So by the time you are now talking about child-friendly police stations, there's already a problem with that, even with that statement. It is important to foresee and to forestall and to be prepared for an eventuality. But it then leads to the question that must be asked, what is happening to our society? Well, why are we seeing an increase in these problems? Is it that we are at a point where many parents cannot look after their children? They'd like to, but they can't.
Yeah.
What is the pressure? What is this thing that makes parents behave in this bizarre manner?
Yeah.
That actually injures their children? What is it about grown-ups who may be known to these children but are not their relatives? What, instead of being the protectors of these children, what makes them behave in the way they do to ensure that the children actually feel unsafe? By the time you're talking about a helpline, by the time you're talking about all these things, this problem is not small.
Yeah, you're right. There's the home, the family home is a place where many things happen. And the child obviously is dependent on parents and other grown-ups in that home to protect them. But that is not always the case, because that person, that parent or that adult in the home could be having their own stresses. And this could be work-related. It could be substance use. It could be marital tensions and problems that tend to spill over to children. It could be they also have their own psychological problems. And a child is always seeking connection and attunement with the parent. And sometimes when you find that parent is not in a position to give that back to the child, or when it's given back, it's given in a way that to the child is more of distressing than being healthy, it becomes a problem. And so you find situations where a child has done a small thing, but then the punishment is not concurrent with what the child has done, because the parent maybe has their own internal stress. So they're not able to regulate themselves enough to, maybe if they're just taking a slippers and just, beating the child, they remove a belt and then they whip the child for not completing homework, for example. So the child has, maybe a neighbor will call the police and say, this child is screaming all the time. So then the law enforcement has to come in and do something, to protect that child. So that's the situation we are in. So I think parents not only need, they say parenting does not come with a manual, but I can tell you as a psychologist that manuals are there. There are ways, there are approaches. Parents can seek help. It's a sign of wisdom, not a sign of weakness, to say that I need help to take care of my child, because I think the way I am doing it is harming my children more than it is helping
Where would
my
they
children.
Get this help?
They'll get it from psychologists, they'll get it from counselors, they'll get it from social workers. And sometimes when a parent is apprehended for abusing the child, like for example, and they're given probation, sometimes they are given probation. Probation officers will take them through parenting, kind of rehabilitation, so that they can be able to identify ways in which their parenting is dysfunctional and be able to be taught healthy parenting mechanisms. So that there is something that can be done. The help is there. They all need just to look for it.
To know how to get it.
Yes.
Affordably.
Yes, affordably.
Okay. Paul Jehe is asking a very good question on YouTube. He's saying, what's the committee doing in regards to the rights of basic needs such as shelter, education, food for children, especially in our urban areas? Do you advocate for measures to reduce their vulnerability? Because you realize that once it starts from that end, it will likely lead to other abuses. If the children, don't have access to the basics, education, shelter, they're not going to school because of whatever circumstances they're in, then that will lead them towards other areas that will expose them to abuse and so on and so forth. So does the committee talk about what can be done at that stage? Preventive.
It does. Not just the committee, but even the law has a bit of provision for that. When I was talking about the forms that are supposed to be filled, they're actually in Schedule 1 of the Act. I have the Children Act here. So basically, if you look at this schedule, what it requires, and this is any child who is coming into the justice system for whatever reason, you're supposed to fill in the children officer or the probation officer or the gender officer, the child-friendly officer that City was talking about, is supposed to be filling in this information, the name of the child, where they go to school, do they have a physical disability, do they probably seem to have maybe some mental incapacity, where were they found, what are the living arrangements of this child, what can be done to assist the parents of this child, what Mueni was talking about basically. When you fill in this form, and if it is filled in properly, because maybe the gap that we have seen is that these forms probably are not being filled in. If it is filled in properly, it will compel different justice actors to do what is right, to prevent situations where now we are saying this child has no food. Because if a children officer is aware that this child is coming from a family that probably is having a hard time providing, then they know within themselves the mechanisms that should be there in place to help these children get the social assistance that they need, or this family assistance that they need.
You mentioned that sometimes these actors know the right thing but don't do it, or are unable to do it.
Let's say are unable to do it.
Yes. What prevents them?
From my experience, this is my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of the Society of Kenya. It is my lived experience. Probably ignorance of
they don't know what
the
they're
law
supposed to
or
do.
what they're supposed to do.
Or they don't know the importance.
Yes, despite being in those positions where they ought to know.
Okay.
I think that is one of the major things. Other things are maybe just general fear. Like if you're doing something, especially when it's child-related and you're alone, the chances of you not wanting to get too
personal,
and
involved,
become high. And that is why we always encourage the network, the referral mechanism, knowing that if I am working on a case as Patricia, I know that there's Florence and the body she represents, which can provide psychosocial support. I know that there's a prosecution that is there, and this is what they are mandated to do, and this is their scope. This is what I can ask for from maybe court, if I'm in court. from the children officer, I can ask for these reports to be presented and to be presented on time. So basically, if I'm working alone as Patricia, I can get frustrated.
Okay. But going back to the question by Jay here, you can see there's some areas where there's higher likelihood of children being exposed to certain vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah.
Because of just the social structure of where they are. Do we have more children officers who are going there to actually not wait for the child to come to the system, but to go to the community to identify, here we have children who are exposed to these dangers, children who are not going to school because their parents cannot afford, children who are then being forced to go and, expose themselves to other circumstances just so that they can eke out a living. Do we have officers who do that, who then would be asked, if a child enters the system, what had you done? Had you identified this? Had you flagged this as a child who is possibly going to get into an abusive situation? Because this child, by the time they're getting to the system, they've been abused. It's after the fact.
When out there in the community, sometimes chiefs hold barazas, and when they hold barazas, they call other government agencies to talk about the services that are available to members of the public. So you would find organizations, agencies like DCS, like probation, accompanying and going and say these are the services, going into schools and talking about crime prevention and all that. If you go like this morning, you go to a children office, you'll find outside a line of parents with children. Some are coming to ask for help with school fees. Some are coming to ask for food. They are coming to ask for different things. And they are connected to services that are available, because of course one agency cannot have everything, address all the needs. There is the Ministry of Education, there is the cash transfer program that takes care of orphans and vulnerable children and supports those families. There are other services out there. But when a child comes into the system, maybe it's a child in need of care and protection, or a child in conflict with the law, there's an assessment that is made of this child's psychosocial needs. So if shelter is a need, if schooling is a need, if accommodation is a need, all those kinds of needs are made, and they are put into what we call a care plan or a treatment plan. So when that plan is made, it does talk about how each of those needs of the child will be addressed.
Florence, you're still talking about after the fact, right?
Yes.
Because your committee brings in all these actors,
Yes.
right? The Department of Children Services is
Yes.
there. And the Department of Children Services deals with a child
Yeah.
from the moment a child is a child,
Yes.
right? Not necessarily when they come into conflict with the law or
Yes.
into contact with the justice system.
Yes.
So does this committee look at the number of cases that are maybe coming into the system that need to be looked at before they get into the system, and coming up with ideas and programs and encouraging these actors, things that they can do, whether it's government or non-governmental actors, things that they can do to make sure that we are reducing the incidences of children who are getting into the system? If it's about abuse, if it's about FGM, if it's about early marriage, all these things, communities that have early marriage, does the NCAJ say, okay, we have these communities that have early marriage, children here are vulnerable, we have these programs that are making sure that these children do not have to be rescued because there is work that has been done. Or we have areas where children are actually getting pregnant when they're in school. So we have programs that are making sure that these children are not getting into these situations as NCAJ's committee.
You see,
Okay.
Patricia.
One of the ways I think I can say the committee has attempted to address that, and to also look at how we can try and prevent what you're talking about, is we sit down with the different civil society actors, different government agencies, different stakeholders basically, and we find out, okay, who is where. who is working on FGM, for example, in Samburu, who is working on this in Meru, for example. And then we say, okay, these are justice issues in this area, and they come into contact with the courts. So we'll form court users committees. We have court users committees, which is also under the laws. And basically, it is the same, what we are saying we have in the standing committee. We also have children court user committees, basically looking at the different actors within the different areas and the different courts that address now issues relating to children, bring out the programs that are already existing, find out which cases have been reported, which cases are rampant, and then these court users committees submit reports. Yeah, they actually submit reports to NCAJ, and then these reports are the ones that now inform the interventions that are going to be there over and above just also responding to the issues that are coming from the ground. So yes, the NCAJ has court user committees. It also has another committee on sexual and gender-based violence that also looks into specifically the laws and the reforms around that.
Right.
So yeah, basically I would say yes, there's also that preventative mechanism.
So there's a framework in place.
Correct.
Okay, so the question then next time will be how well that framework is frameworking. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us.
Yeah, we even
Thank
have
you.
a justice strategy that we will be launching.
Yes, but it's already J4C, Justice for Children strategy.
Oh, nice.
That is already also on the NCAJ website. So we encourage everybody to see the strategies that is already in place. So if you visit the NCAJ website and look for the strategy, you should be able to find it there. Yeah.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.